Yes, greetings to all the family, those that may catch the show live, those that may catch the show on the replay. An interesting topic I have today on KINGZ TALK, this podcast that we're running. The KINGZ TALK podcast is based around this movement that I am a part of, that I'm promoting, called the King Alpha movement. The King Alpha movement. And the podcast is designed to go through a range of different topics that relate to what it means to be a king, what it means as a man to embrace your masculinity in this age, in this decade, where the term toxic masculinity has come about. And as men, how can we navigate people who are trying to maybe hijack or discombobulate the idea and the concept which is natural to a man, which is to be masculine, but at the same time do it in a positive, in a righteous, in a structured, grounded way. So we're going to be talking about a variety of different things. And this particular episode, I'm going to be having an amazing and interesting, I'm going to bring him on the page now, positive person, the brother. I'm going to unmute your mic. The
Gotcha.
brother, Kahseim Outlaw. Yes, mic check. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you.
I can hear you and I can see you.
Beautiful.
I can see you as well.
I see you too, brother.
Yes, brother. So let me stop this ticker that's going across.
Yeah.
Now, greetings to you. We're in different time zones.
Yes, we are.
And so I'm thankful for you taking the time to discuss with me this topic that I know is close to your heart. I labeled this show cold water therapy, okay? Benefits for men, but there was many different things I could have labeled the show as, but I wanted something that would, obviously draw people in, draw men in. And as I was stating there, we're Facebook friends. We've met over Facebook. We've never met in person yet. Aligned. I was, for the intro, just talking about the King Alpha way, which is the movement that I am promoting, that I am a part of. which is focused around men like yourself, like myself, particularly men of African descent, embracing that masculinity and using it as a strength rather than as a weakness or as a barrier or as something that may trip them up because they're not able to control it or they haven't developed it in the right way, so on and so on. And I know that you're aligned with that because I can see the different things that you do and the mindset that you have as well. That's something for another show. I know that you're part of your own movement and your own collective, which you call hashtag It Seems Right. So we'll speak about that in a minute, and then we'll get into the topic. I don't want to keep you too long because you're a family man like me, and we have lots going on.
Yes.
So first, introduce yourself formally. Let us know where you're based, as well as let us know about It Seems Right and how that relates to what you're doing today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, David, for having me. It's been a pleasure to kind of watch the synergy between the two of us and the messages that we're promoting, albeit across the pond. There's something that is very kindred when I see some of the messages and the content that you're putting out. So thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. As you stated, my name is Kahseim Outlaw. I'm based in Connecticut in the United States, up in New England, where it's a little chilly right now, and we'll get to talk about the cold in just a moment. But I'm a father.
Coast, Connecticut, East Coast, isn't it?
Yeah, East Coast. Up top, kind of, I don't know, maybe about 5.5 hours away from the Canadian border. So seems like a far drive, but it's only really a little skip up there. But yeah, I'm a father, I'm a teacher. I try to consider myself as a purveyor of joy. I found that if I can keep a smile on my face, regardless of what I'm going through, it helps to inspire other people to do the same thing. And along this journey of life, I've picked up some bits of wisdom that have helped me tremendously. And I take it as kind of like a personal objective of mine to help share that with every and anyone rather who would listen. When it comes to Seems Right, I get a lot of questions about that. It's a hashtag that I created a few years ago, and it's really a play on words. It's kind of a representation of my name, Kahseim, S-E-I-M, towards the latter part of my name. And it's an acronym. And for me, it can involve a bunch of things, but essentially it's sensibility, enthusiasm, inspiration, and motivation. So when you break those things down, these are pretty much 4 pillars that I try to live my life by. Do I have the sensibility to see what the proper course of action is in any moment? Do I have the enthusiasm about it? Am I joyful with it? Am I showing people that you can live this life with a level of energy that is conducive to health, that is conducive to prosperity and success in all things? And then inspiration. You know, I found that inspiration is one of our greatest tools. And we can live this life learning and growing on our own, but if we can't share that with others and inspire them to live a life that is well suited to their own needs, then we kind of fall short. And then the last part of that is the motivation piece. While sometimes you may need to light a fire under someone to really get them going and get them out of a slump, other times just being yourself and maybe a word or maybe an exhibition of what you're doing in life can enlighten them and get them kind of energized and moving in the right direction. So the other piece of this, you know, seems right. Obviously, when something seems right to you, there's an intelligence beneath the logical mind that lets you know that something is the right course of action. And I can recall ever since I was a young child, kind of feeling like there was a voice that was guiding me, that was telling me, you know, what the right mode of action is. Even if I wasn't willing in the moment to take that course, it was always there. It was this knowing. And as I've gotten older, I've learned to tap more into that knowing and trust that knowing. And when we talk about what seems right, we're not talking about, you know, what is righteous by whatever standard. We're talking about in your own mind and heart. Do you know that what you're doing, what you're saying, and how you're conducting yourself is for the betterment and the well-being of everyone around you? So that's kind of the crux of what that means to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. I didn't realize that it was a play on your surname.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, is that your first name?
Yeah.
Your first name, Kahseim. So
yeah.
it seems right. And that's basically you're talking about that inner voice, that inner voice, which can be described in many, many different ways and has been described by many different cultures and people over time, that acts as a guiding compass to what we do.
Yes.
And so basically you're relating the whole idea of it seems right. It seems right, so maybe that's what we should do. And listening to that inner voice when it seems right, that's the right thing to do, as well as when that quote unquote to maybe not take that course of action that may not seem right just because others may be doing it. A man is able to listen to that inner voice and say, you know what, even though the crowd may be doing this, that doesn't seem right to me, so I think I'm going to go and do that.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Now, where can people find out more about It Seems Right before we get into our discussion? Is it only on Facebook, following you as your personal profile, or do you have any websites or Instagram or?
Yep. So I have hopes to expand this into a larger branding and a larger offering. As of right now, it's simply just a hashtag that I put on all of my content. But I do have a website. It's my first and last name, KahseimOutlaw.com, which has a little bit more information about me and how to contact me. It's my feeble attempt to be an online presence, but it's a start to at least have the website and a landing page for people to go. But yeah, once again, that's KahseimOutlaw.com.
And so they can find you there. You're not on Instagram then?
I am. Yep. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. It's all my first and last.
What are you? What? Okay. So I haven't added you on Instagram yet. So
yeah, please do.
I'll make sure and do that. Now, let's jump into the topic, which is hopefully what people will either see online live now, or they'll go into YouTube, because a lot of people are into cold water therapy. And I know a lot about it. I know you know a lot about it because you're a practitioner, especially since the advent of social media, YouTube, online platforms, which have brought people like Wim Hof to the forefront with his promotion of cold water and cold water therapy. How did you get into cold water therapy? And before you do that, I actually have some clips from your Facebook page.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to bring up. Hopefully, I get the technology right. Let's see if I can do this. So if I bring this up, and I will do. It's not slides. Let's see. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Share screen, and I got the first one, which is you here.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this says
first cold bath. Yeah,
we'll
November
to see
15th.
This. First cold bath in November 15th, 2015. Okay, so that's what's that, that's 8 years ago.
Yeah.
8 years ago that you can see a locks there, locks it down to your shoulder. I know they're much longer now.
Yeah.
That you were already starting to enter into and test this particular process for you. What made you go this way into testing that?
Well, I'll start by saying that I've always kind of unintentionally been connected to this cold water therapy. I wouldn't consider myself an avid outdoorsman, but I am someone who loves to connect with nature, and camping and hiking and being in the forest is something that I always look forward to. I actually have a bit of property up in Vermont, which is a little bit further north in New England from where I am. And even in the spring and in the summer, some of those streams and ponds and brooks and rivers and things are flowing with some pretty ice cold water. It comes from the mountain peaks, the snow-capped mountains, and comes down. And I'm not someone who likes to wait for a shower or a bath, like when I get home from these camping trips. So typically, either on the morning or on the way out, I'll jump into one of these streams, and they are bone-chillingly cold. And while I was doing these things, I never thought about reaping any benefits from them. I was just trying to get, cleaned up and hit the car and not be too smelly on the ride home. But I think I was inadvertently reaping the benefits of these long before I even thought about it consciously. So that's one part of it. It's in terms of November of 2015, when I did this first intentional cold plunge, excuse me, it actually was due to the inspiration gained by Wim Hof, where, I think it was on Vice where he started putting out, there was a documentary called The Iceman Cometh, and it talked about his journey through pain and suffering that brought him to the cold water and saw it as a therapy, and then started doing some of the scientific research around it. And that was just amazing to me. It was amazing to see a man of flesh and blood go through some things that most of us would deem, unachievable or insurmountable challenges. And I'm a very competitive person. I've been an athlete my entire life and still try to hold on to that title even to today. And that competitive edge, soccer, football.
Really?
Yeah. I've been playing.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I've been playing football since I was probably 8 years old, and still
you need to come over to London.
I know.
Just before this, I was literally playing football for 2 hours.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I still play as much as I can. And it's one of those sports that, as men, this is like a shameless plug for soccer, for football, as you would call it. It's a sport that has a lot of longevity. And if you stay free of injury and you stay in relatively good shape and good health, you can continue to play the sport you love for an entire lifetime. The same can't be said about a lot of different, games, if you will. But it's a real wonderful way of life. And to connect with people of all different cultures, it's something that has a spiritual aspect to it as well, as I'm sure you can identify with.
That's actually one of the future videos I've been had in my Rolodex for a long time. Maybe we can piggyback on that one, which is about the esoteric nature of sports in general. But obviously, I would focus on football. But we'll leave that one for another day.
Yeah, I'd love to sit in on that one with you.
So to summarize, you were just saying that you do a lot of camping because you live in a sort of a rural area.
Yeah.
And part of that would involve obviously going in the streams and the rivers, which are naturally very cold. I mean, I've been to many rivers around the world, and even if you're in the tropics, water's cold because it's coming out of the ground. So that's one way you expose yourself. And then you're saying that you saw the information from Wim Hof, and that kind of connected the two, that this wasn't just something you could do, after a camping trip, but it's also something that might unlock certain therapeutic benefits too. Was it more physical therapeutic benefits that you were looking for in this particular 2015? Why were you doing this? Like, what's the setting behind this with the bathtub, the trough, and sitting in? Was this after a match, or was this something more spiritual?
Yep. So I can't recall the exact scenario of what led me to there that morning. I do remember my wife outside taking these pictures for me and telling me that I was crazy as I shivered in that tub, which I happened to have prior to that, but not for any cold plunges or anything. I think we used to use it to wash our puppies in. But it was really about the challenge. It was about seeing something that seemed very difficult and really had no reason in my own life to try to go after it. But I said, you know what? I got to try this out. I've always been a fan of experience over anything. And if there's something that I want to know, I have to be willing to put myself through it. So that was kind of the impetus right there, is just jumping into this extremely uncomfortable situation and seeing how long I can sit in it, and therefore giving me a better perspective of Wim Hof and any other kind of men out in the world who are doing things like this. I wanted to be able to speak to it confidently, to whoever would ask me. So I had to put myself through it. And what do I recall gaining from that particular experience? Being cold for multiple hours after that and shivering, kind of got down to the bone level where you just feel like you couldn't get warm all day. But I did notice a reduction in inflammation, from playing football and rolling ankles and, getting these little niggling injuries around the knees or the shins.
You mean, so when you say reduction in inflammation, are you talking about future matches after that in terms of the way your body kind of added a layer of resilience to injury and so on after that, or was that just from soaking and you had a prior injury?
Yeah. So what I noticed was the recovery aspect. So anything that might have been bothering me prior to, when you get out of that experience, you're like, whoa, where'd it go? It almost vanishes. And depending on how you live and what you get into after that, you may notice a recurrence of some soreness or something. But generally speaking, if you have any kind of inflammatory response because of an injury, that cold water will cause a reduction in that. I mean, it's similar to putting ice on a rolled ankle or something like that, but this is full body. This is systemic kind of reduction of, the capillary size, and everything kind of gets tucked in, and you feel really good about that.
Vasoconstriction.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So obviously, as a footballer, and many out there who follow sports will know that the top athletes, I mean, they go in cryogenic chambers nowadays. And back in the day, of course, the ice bath was always the dreaded recovery for players, but it was a big part, and still is a big part of recovery for professional athletes. When you come over here and you go and visit some of the stadiums, like I've been to Arsenal Football Club, and you go in the back room and you see the hot tub, you see the showers, but you also see the ice bath as well.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a big part of scientifically sports science in regards to recovery. And I tell people all the time, I mean, I'm close to 50 now, and I play with a lot of men who are slightly older than me, and many who are about my age, and others who are younger than me. And a lot of them have different challenges with joints, specifically knees, because you know how football can be. And I always tell them that if you want to not just help your injury to go away, the acute part, but the chronic aspect of it, use ice and use it in a therapeutic way. I want to say that I was doing some research for this, and one of my favorite books is Healing with Whole Foods. I'll put that on. Click the layout. Here we go. Yeah, Healing with Whole Foods, Oriental Traditions and Modern Nutrition. It's a very thick book, big book, and it's about basically Chinese medicine. And I was looking for any information regarding like cold, and I found some. And obviously, if you go back to principles within Chinese medicine, they talk about yin and yang, various pronunciations of that. And they say the source of yin and yang, and therefore of all dualities, is that which is unified and unchanging. The yang principle is active while the yin is passive, yet nothing is purely yin or purely yang. And then when it goes to the principles of extremes, it says, when the excessive principle reaches its limit, the extreme yin or yang transforms into its opposite. This is known as the principles of extremes. Okay, so this principle is readily observed in warm-blooded animals when a fever is produced in response to an exposure to cold, or when chills result from an excess of summer heat. Finally, it says, extreme cold produces great heat, and extreme heat produces intense cold. And the book goes, the whole chapter is about yin and yang, which is summarized for the neophyte in regards to the classic yin yang symbol that we know with, the white and black circles, so on and so on. So does any of that resonate to you from you practicing cold water therapy? And also, can you describe like how, if somebody wants to go about doing it, how do you go about doing it, and give them some information on that? By the way, we need to tell the listeners that we are not, I know for myself, I'm not a doctor, a medical doctor. This information is provided for educational and edutainment purposes. So they must go and do their own research. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that statement where it says extreme cold produces great heat and the whole idea of yin and yang regarding cold?
Yeah, and I appreciate you giving that disclaimer because I was about to just say the same thing.
Yeah.
We don't want people following in our footsteps in a way that they're unprepared and then put themselves in harm's way. There's definitely a rebound effect, and I think that's what yin and yang is kind of representing, is that we have to maintain a balance. And if we are balanced in our lives in all aspects, then generally we're going to find health and wellness easily achievable. But for most of us in our modern culture and Western society, we find that we're heavy on one side of the spectrum, and every now and then we dip over to the other side to try to reap some benefits. But only when we find this balance where we can kind of sway back and forth but maintain some sort of equilibrium can we find this state of wellness. For me, when it comes to the cold therapy, right, it could be physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional. Let's take the mental emotional aspect of it. When you're experiencing stress, which the effects of stress, which many of us are, whether that's family or professional or relationship or whatever it might be, we find that we're hyper focused on the logical kind of sensory aspect of this. And by taking our body and putting it into a physical stressor, then we then push ourselves to the limit of our physicality. And then it starts to transmute into our mental emotional state and say, okay, well, we don't have the energy to kind of dwell on this stuff right here. We're focused on survival. And during that time, when you kind of reach that line where it goes from physical into the mental emotional, you're allowed to release things that aren't serving you. And this is something that I've experienced firsthand. I experience it basically every weekend when I put myself through this, is where all the things that have been on my mind or on my consciousness for the week that seemed so important at the time are therefore let go of. They're released. They're given a little bit of leeway. And I get to decide what to bring back. So I'm in this state of heightened awareness. My body's screaming at me. It's saying, hey, we need to shut some certain things down so we can maintain this balance. And we're going to let go of things that we no longer need a grasp on. And then it brings us back to this state. We talked a little bit about the rebound effect, right? So you roll an ankle, you've got inflammation, you get in the water and it goes away. And then you get out, and chances are there's going to be a prolonged period of time before you feel any kind of injury or any kind of soreness or any kind of, uncomfortable, situation there. And that's what I've noticed on the physical side. But as I said, the same thing happens with the mental emotional. You can let go of that pain, and there's a good chunk of distance between what you've experienced before and when you experience again, if ever at all. So that's kind of like the two ends of the spectrum that kind of sway back and forth.
From your research, I know that Wim Hof is from Northern Europe. I'm pretty sure he's from Finland.
I think he's from Belgium.
Belgium?
Yeah, Amsterdam. Sorry, the Netherlands. The Netherlands.
He's from Netherlands.
Yes.
Well, it's not too cold up there. I thought he was from maybe Norway or something like that. But anyway, so obviously they have access to very cold weather during the winter, and with that frozen habitats where they can directly do this rather than getting bathtubs and stuff. Have you that talked about any other particular cultures who may engage in this practice? Besides,
yeah, I think we had a little bit of a skip there in the audio, but that's all right. I think I got the gist of it. I've been seeing in like Northern Asia, like Northeastern Asia, the top of like Siberia and Mongolia, and these places where some of these tribal communities still live, there is a tendency to go out into the cold for intentional exposure. I mean, they're kind of living in it, but I believe there are some rituals around health and healing that relate to intentional exposure on a regular basis, cutting blocks out of the ice and jumping in and staying submerged and coming back out. And then there's also the sauna that they balance with that, kind of the yin and the yang, again, going back and forth between the two extremes. But outside of that, I haven't looked. I mean, you got to look at the natural topography and the climate. So there's only a certain few cultures
to
that
be
I
able
think
to
would
do that.
embody this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
For me, and I'll jump in a bit, and then I have one of your videos that I'm gonna play from when you're actually going in the cold weather. It's
Yeah.
particularly on this one, which was very interesting. I'll wait for that.
Yeah.
But for me, because I've done, as I said, I'm a big believer in using ice in terms of physical therapy for injury and therapeutic of recovering from injuries or chronic sort of injuries. So, like I said, if someone has ongoing knee issues and they don't have a direct injury, I always promote with them the use of ice. So I would say to them, listen, what you need to be doing is you need to be putting ice onto that, let's say wherever it is, ankle, knee, whatever part of the muscle, whatever, 15 minutes on and then 15 minutes off. And you need to do that ideally because we all work maybe 3 times a day. What that does, in particular for the knee, as you said, you have the vasoconstriction, which is when the blood flow, basically the muscles kind of tighten up and all of the different parts of the body, the blood constricts. And then as the parts of the body warm up, obviously the blood flow new blood can get back in there, just like the freeze thaw cycle that we see in nature. So that's a well-known sort of scientific backed, therapeutic thing that a physio may say or doctor may say, in particular for inflammation. I'm not talking just about inflammation. I'm also talking about where there is damage and the inflammation has gone down. This is a way to kind of move forward with other things such as stretching. So that's a whole nother thing. But from the also partook in cold water therapy. Normally for me, it's the use of the shower, or when I am going back to Bermuda, where I'm from, we go in the ocean. Now I have an aunt. She's still with us. She's in her late 90s, and this aunt, all my life, my aunt Coralita, she has gone swimming first thing in the morning in Bermuda. When I say first thing, I mean sun coming up first thing in the morning. And believe me, even though it's Bermuda, summertime is fine, but year round, she would do this. And she was still doing this up. Now she's a bit too old. She's not able to go unassisted and so on and so on. But all the way up to probably her 80s, she was going in the water religiously almost every day in the morning. She would walk down, go in the water, and the water would be very cold. And as her young nephew and the family, sometimes we would join her here and there sporadically. And believe me, that was cold. So I know the positive long-term health effects that it's had on her and some of the other morning swimmers, we call them, that do this on a regular basis, in particular in regards to longevity, okay, and aging. So I've highlighted the physical aspect in terms of injury recovery. You did as well. And now I'm talking about the longevity aspect in terms of just the way that the conditioning of the body, because that whole body immersion, then that whole vasoconstriction and vasodilation is going to take place across the body as well. But there's the other element that really moved me towards doing it like at home with the shower and things like that, which is the mental and spiritual aspect of it, which you touched on as well. So for me, the mental aspect, this is coming from someone who, like many of us, suffered from anxiety for many years, and especially around the time of my mother's passing. When I say anxiety, it wasn't just being anxious. It was, anxiety as a what do they call it? You know, condition, as
Yeah.
a condition. And part of being anxious is you're either living in the past or you're living in the future, which hasn't happened. And so as I was doing my research, one of the key methodologies that I was able to adopt so that I could live in the now was the cold water therapy. Because as you know, when you get into that shower or into the ice bath or brain is only thinking about what's happening right now. It's a survival, as you said. Your body kicks into that survival mode, and it says, "What is this? What are you doing? This is very extreme," and that means, as you said, you have to focus on what's on the now. But because it's so cold, you really can't focus on it. So you're like in this between place where you kind of have to just settle your mind, and it creates discipline because you have to resist the urge to turn the water onto warm, or I'm sure for you, get out of the water or things like that. You know, you have to resist that urge. So mentally, it can create that discipline, that ability to live in the present moment, and that resilience as well. Now, spiritually, I'm going to play this video, and then I'd like you to talk to me about, you know, we haven't talked in detail, in depth before, but I can tell, you know, that you're a spiritual person, whatever that means, about getting into the meaning of that. And I'd like for you to talk to me about how these experiences, in particular this one, impacted you spiritually. So let me see if I can get the technology playing. See if I can do this. Share screen. And let's go with this one here. And I'm going to play the video. Hopefully people will be able to hear it.
No! Yo, come on. Come on, follow me, follow me. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Come on, come on.
Oh. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with this one.
You can hear the wind blowing.
I'm getting cold just thinking about that, brother.
Okay. I'm going to freeze that one. And then it's this one.
Didn't switch on my end. Did it switch on your end, David?
You're not seeing it?
No, I didn't see the second one.
Okay, hold on. Let me escape from that.
All right.
Try to get that. Share screen. Not that one. This one. How about now? Can you see it now?
Yep. Can see that one. This one was fun too.
Get ready to fall right in. I might look right at the step.
Yeah, that took a while to break through to the point where we can finally get in, but there's something to be said about that process in itself.
Nice though. Gotta watch out for these big pieces. You're gonna cut yourself up.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the safety protocols as well.
All right. So let me bring us back in.
Yeah.
So that was 2 examples directly. It's on video, so it's not just this brother is not just a talker; he's a practitioner.
Yeah.
You've done the ice bath, which you saw in the first 2015 picture. I think the second one I showed was in the ocean, obviously.
Yeah, that was Christmas Eve of this past year, 2022.
Christmas Eve in
yeah,
Connecticut.
In Connecticut, on the shoreline. And
on the shoreline.
that was one of the coldest days. I think it was the second coldest day that we've had in a very long time. And so I live about a half an hour away from the shore. So what happened that morning was I met my buddy at our typical meeting spot at the lake. And because of the holiday or for whatever reason, maybe it was too early, the gate wasn't open. So we would have had to have walked quite a distance to get to the water, did the plunge, and then walked back. So I said, you know what? Let's take the drive down to the shoreline where we can park the car close. We'll get in the water and we'll get back out. Now, unbeknownst to me, it was low tide. So where we got undressed to where the water was, it was about a 60-yard kind of walk across the frozen sand. So, and this goes back to me and my challenging competitive nature. I like to go against Mother Nature and see what she's got for me. And then in the face of that, kind of push myself to the limit. And this was a time where I really got chin checked, so to speak, because she showed me that, nurture has little against nature. So we stripped down, we walked the 50, 60 yards to the water, and then we got in. By that time, we were already really cold. It was about -7, I think, with the wind chill. And it was 30, 40 mile an hour winds, something crazy like that. So once we got our feet in the water, we had to walk probably another 50 yards to get deep enough to get, submerged. So the whole time, I'm pumped up, I'm laughing, I'm yelling, I'm full of energy, which was great. But then on the way back, coming out of the water with that long walk, that wind chill was whipping and it was just hitting my wet skin. And my friend Greg, shout out to my friend Greg, who's been doing this with me for the last couple of years. And we didn't realize the damage that we were doing to our feet and our hands and our bodies, which really didn't hit home until we got in the car and had to drive a half an hour back. And we're both in the car, trying to get the blood flowing to the fingertips, and it's supremely painful. I actually never felt pain or discomfort like that in my entire life, no matter what arena. So it took me probably 3 weeks to fully recover from that. My fingers were peeling, my toes were peeling.
Wow.
I found out that I had something called frost nip, which is the precursor, precursor to frostbite.
Yeah,
I was unaware of that. So that's just a great example of pushing yourself as far as you can, maybe a little too far, but then learning the lesson. The whole crux of this practice for me is about learning lessons. And each time I go out, the experience is different. Sometimes it's more challenging than the other, but I always walk away with some tidbit, some gem that I can kind of bring into my normal everyday life and help me kind of better navigate it. So that one, I'm glad that you showed that one. That one was really challenging.
And then the other one, you literally had to break the ice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of esoteric meanings because I'm a spiritual person. I also look at esoteric, which means hidden wisdom in all things. And as you said, just the act alone and the use of the tools was lessons within itself. So speak to us about that.
Yeah. So whenever you have to intentionally put yourself into a challenging scenario, there's kind of like an oxymoron there. You're like, well, okay, so why am I doing this? And that why, for most of us, the why is the greatest question we'll ever ask in any scenario. So when it comes to this, you're breaking through ice, your feet are cold, your body's cold, but you're continuously pushing forward and you're asking yourself, why? Now, eventually you'll get to a point. Maybe it'll be that plunge. Maybe it'll be a couple days later. Maybe it'll be the next plunge. Who knows? Maybe it'll be years later or a lifetime later. You're going to hear the answer to that why, and it's going to make more sense to you than anything you've ever heard. So for me, kind of going back to this on a regular basis helps to answer that why for me. Breaking through this challenging kind of sucky situation, sitting in it, and then breathing through it. That's the other thing that we didn't really kind of tackle just yet. But Wim Hof speaks about this, ad nauseum, is that focusing on the breath and realizing that you're okay where you are for whatever amount of time is hugely empowering. You know, whether it's the loss of a loved one, which we recently experienced a pretty traumatic loss in our family. And, you know, I wasn't really thinking about it at the time, but this work that I've been doing on myself for the last few years has really helped me bounce back quicker and stay more balanced in those moments where I feel like the world is falling down around me. So this practice has been hugely empowering for me.
Yeah. Spiritually,
Mm.
what do you think in terms of spirit?
Yeah.
You talked about that voice, which to me that's the spiritual connection that we have that goes deeper than the physical.
Mm.
How would you say this challenges that you put yourself in, the cold water, going in the ice, what
Mm-hmm.
would you say the spiritual lessons or spiritual fruit of these practices are?
Yeah, it's really about drowning out all the unnecessary noise. I'm a huge proponent of the idea, if you will, or the belief, whatever you want to call it, that there's a stream of consciousness, a frequency that is always speaking to us. And only when we align with that frequency can we tune in and hear what it's trying to tell us. And this practice, amongst some others that I've had in my life, have really allowed me to drown out the unnecessary noise and tune into that. And it's really difficult to focus on anything other than that when you're standing out in the middle of the ocean and you're looking up at the sky and the clouds and the vastness of the horizon, and you're just this small piece. And this small piece that is going through this intentional suffering, trying to hear the message that is there for you all along. Some people do this in meditation. I've had experiences where I've been able to do this on my mat, which is a lot more comfortable. But sometimes I think, you know, depending on what's going on in our lives, we got to put ourselves into some of these challenges to really just get a quick, you know, kind of quantum leap into the space where we can absorb that conscious frequency.
Yeah, that's deep. That's something we could obviously go on and on about. I know that from a spiritual practitioner perspective, that asceticism, which is the removal of materialism from your space and entering into spaces of extremism. So, for example, in India, with a lot of the sadhus, you may have the sadhus that do extreme challenges. So they may hold the arm up in the air and try to, and they're going to continue to do that for their life.
Yeah.
And you may have those that give up everything and even wash themselves in dung, you know, in human excrement as a way to remove all attachment to the physical. You have those that, like you, immerse themselves in ice cold, but they immerse themselves in fire. So I've seen, you know, some of their practices, which is also something that we tend to look at India a lot for. But when you go to Africa, and particularly West Africa, and you look at some of the Voodoo and different practices that involve Ife, like Shango and so on, a lot of them practice this fire eating and these so-called extremes as well in order to connect with, you know, that higher stream of consciousness that you mentioned. So I can relate to, and I know that viewers who are looking to understand cold water therapy, we've talked about the physical aspect, we've talked about the recuperative aspect, we've talked about the mental aspect, mental recuperation and strengthening. That spiritual side is, for me, very, very powerful as well. And you kind of summed it up because you said that sometimes you get that hit, you know, that check, you know. And me as a martial artist, you would have seen on my Facebook lately that I've taken up boxing in the past year because my young son, I put him into boxing. He goes to Taekwondo, but now he's 10. We want to get the boxing because boxing gives you another level of footwork. So I've been doing the boxing with him. And the class that I go to is a lot of boys who are like in the 60s be fighters. So I'm coming in just kind of for the, the practice, but they're on it.
Yeah.
So they're checking it, and they've been doing it for years. So that hit me, what's supposed to be sparring, just not even light. We're just supposed to be shadowing.
Oh, okay.
Thing, but because they're quick, you get hit. So that body check is important, because as a boxer, as a fighter, you need to be able to feel what it's like to feel that, so that when that does come in a real fight, in the real heart of the battle, you're able to say, yeah, I'm aware of that. And in fact, I appreciate that, because it's teaching me a lesson. Either I let my guard down, or I didn't do this, or, so on and so on. So that part of the check, as you said, is an important aspect as well. We're going to close out. It's 56. We've been in for 56 minutes, which is a good time. I want to try to keep these King Talks to 1 hour. In developing this mindset that I'm calling the King Alpha Way, one of the focus, there's many different categories that I try to encapsulate this King Alpha Way. It's a mindset as a framework, and it's also a practical aspect to it as well, like what you do and how you think. So one of the most important aspects of kingship, from my studies and from my perspective, is the concepts of discipline and resilience. They're closely related. Discipline, resilience, strength. Because if you're strong, you can have resilience. If you have discipline, you can have resilience. If you're resilient, then you can develop discipline. They're all interconnected. You can't separate them. Let's close out by, in terms of, in this walk, in this way of myself, yourself, and our sons who we're hoping to develop into kings. Now, kings mean the best version of themselves. That's what kings means, in this regard. There's a lot more to it, but that's something that I know that you would want for your son, and I would want for my sons as well. How do you think the cold water therapy, do you think is useful for those people who are looking to develop themselves as kings?
100%. If I had any recommendation for people, it would be to step into the cold shower practice. It's something that is easily accessible. Everyone can do it. It's something that is easily scalable. So you don't have to go to the extremes like I'm willing to, or most people want to walk away from that, but you can step into it at your own pace. But you'll find that with consistency and devotion, that you can achieve anything. And this is just a small practice that can show you that. And then once you're shown that in one realm of your life, then it can transfer. These are transferable skills that we're talking about here. This isn't just jump in the cold for the physical benefits and so on and so forth. Yeah, you'll get those. But what we're looking at as this practice and a myriad of others, can we try these out? Can we experience these, gain the gems of wisdom that we were talking about earlier, and then allow that to bleed into every aspect of our lives, and therefore inspire the young kings coming after us to do the same? Not all of us are going to feel compelled to gravitate towards these practices, but there's something out there for everyone. And this is one that I found that was really beneficial to me. And if I find that it's no longer useful for me, then I have no problem letting it go. But in the meantime, during these cold New England winters, to get through it, this has been a tremendous help.
What does your family think? What does your wife think, and the children? I've seen your son, on your social media. I think you have a daughter as well, right?
No, just my son. I've got a 9-year-old son, so we're kindred in that, and he's into MMA right now as well. So striking, kickboxing, grappling, and all of that.
Okay.
But he's done the polar plunge with me. He did one last year, and he says he doesn't want to do it again. Rightfully so. I've had my father's 62 years old. I had him in the water last year, and he did well with that. But again, probably not something that he's looking forward to doing. My wife thinks I'm crazy. She has an extreme love of comfort, and rightfully so. But that this practice isn't for her. Not yet, but maybe one day I'll get her in the water too.
Yeah, it's very beneficial for women as well, and that's something we didn't really get to, and especially in terms of you know, the adipose tissue in terms of fat and breaking down fat and all of that sort of thing.
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, like you said, when you went into the ocean and you're sitting in your car, I'm sure you were shivering and so on. Your body is trying to burn so much of that energy just to warm you up. So, and that can help with things like weight loss. Listen, it seems right, as you said. I'm very, very grateful for your presence. I know we're going to talk again, and we're going to link in other ways. And thank you for being on this episode of KINGZ TALK. And respect, peace, and love.
Same. Thank you very much, Dr. David, and I look forward to connecting in the future.
Habibi.
Habibi.
Stay on the line.
Will do.